Hi everyone, Elliot here again, and this is my home network tour for 2022. I'm starting it this time in my hallway cabinet as I've done in previous videos. So I shall start with what is at the top. The two white things at the top, what you see, are BT OpenReach VDSL modems. I now have two internet connections, and hence there is two modems, one for each internet connection. The one on the left does my PlusNet internet connection, and the one on the right does my Zen internet connection. Then to the right of those we have my QNAP TVS expansion bay box, what is connected to my Windows server. That essentially has a 6TB WD Purple drive in it for CCTV purposes, and is connected via USB 3 to my server. Then below what's on top, actually in the top of the rack itself, we have my Windows server. That still runs Windows Server 2016 Essentials, but the drives have changed a bit in it. So the boot drive is still a 240GB SSD, but I additionally have an additional 240GB SSD for Hyper-V virtual machine use. I also have a 8TB WD Purple drive in the server as well, again for CCTV purposes. And then I have, as last time, a 10TB hard drive as a backup to my NAS. Below that we have my Cat 6 patch panel, what is the oldest thing in the rack itself. And then below that we have my Cisco SG350 24p layer 3 PoE switch, what is a 10 gig switch. And then finally on the lowest level in the rack we have my Draytech Vigor 2962 dual WAN firewall. So that essentially includes what's in the rack. Of course, down here we have the actual monitor from a server, as well as the keyboard and mouse. And then right at the bottom we have my QNAP TVS 672XT NAS box that has 6TB WD Red Pro drives in it. 5 of them are in RAID 6, and then the last one is a hot spare. It also has two 1TB M.2 SSDs inside in RAID 1, acting as another storage area. So that pretty much concludes everything that is in my hallway cabinet. The only other thing to mention is that my SmartThings home automation hub, as well as my Hive hub, is in the cupboard above. And now for the actual UPS, what protects all of this, that's in the loft, and that is a 1500 volt amp APC UPS that's connected to my server by USB, and of course that gives about a 30 to 40 minute runtime in the middle of power loss to everything which you're currently seeing. Anyway, I shall now continue the video probably in the kitchen, where I will then show you what has changed in there and what the current setup is in there. We are now in the kitchen, and most things in here are the same as last time. However, one thing that really has changed is that in the cupboard where I have my home theatre PC, I now have a Cisco SG250-08 layer 2 managed switch, where last time it was simply a unmanaged gigabit switch. That Cisco SG250-08 essentially feeds the home theatre PC, the network audio streamer, what's in the cupboard along with the door closed, the actual set-top box, Blu-ray player, and the TV. And that pretty much concludes the stuff in the kitchen, other than of course the AP on the ceiling. So anyway, that is pretty much it for in here. So other than the actual switch now being a managed switch, I don't think there's any changes since the last home network tour. I shall now continue the video in my shed. We are now in my shed, and first of all, please excuse the mess. What you see in front of you at the bottom of my homemade rack in the shed is essentially my old untangled firewall that was the Smoothwall S4 appliance. I moved back to Dreadtech firewalls about a year ago due to compatibility and stability issues I was having regarding site-to-site VPN tunnels that I could never fully resolve, and since moving back to Dreadtech, those stability issues with the VPN tunnels have gone away. So essentially that Smoothwall S4 appliance is now no longer in use and is purely in here for storage. Above that we have my Cisco 250-10P PoE switch, what provides connectivity for the NAS box, what I'll talk about in a minute, the AP in this shed, 3 PoE IP cameras, and 2 ports on my workbench. I got that switch probably about 8 months ago, maybe 7 months. So that what is in my homemade rack in the shed. Above that, right at the top of the rack, or not the rack, but at the top of the actual storage area, we have my old QNAP NAS, what is a TVS 453A. That has 2 6TB drives in RAID 1 plus a single 4TB drive. That acts as a secondary backup to my main NAS in the hallway cabinet. That NAS also powers my Alexa device just there. And then also, what you probably can't see is a 850 volt amp UPS, what protects the NAS box as well as a switch. Now, the other thing what's changed significantly since the last home network tour is I now have a hardwired connection from a hallway cabinet to the shed, and that essentially is that point up there, what then feeds the uplink port on the end of my switch, what is essentially port 10. So that pretty much concludes what is in the shed. The actual AP in here is now a Unify AC SHD AP. That is the same AP as I've got in my house. And then for the actual IP cameras, there's an IP camera facing the back garden, an IP camera facing the actual decking at the top, and then a 180-degree view IP camera just there. So all 3 IP cameras are powered via the actual PoE switch there. And I think that pretty much concludes everything in my shed. And the last thing to mention I almost forgot to show you was the actual network points on my workbench. So the switch ports from left to right, the 2 green ones are my NAS box, the orange one is the AP, the 3 black ones are the 3 IP cameras, the 2 black ones then are the ports on my workbench, and then the one on the end is the uplink from the main house. So that essentially concludes everything that is in my shed, and I will now continue the video back indoors. We are now in my bedroom, and most things in here are the same as my last home network tour, although what has changed since last time is I now have a Cisco SG250-08 manager switch which feeds things like my hi-fi and my work PC under the desk on the left, as well as the actual network cable on the desk that sometimes feeds things like my laptop or my VoIP phone. Anyway, other than that, the only thing that has changed is the specs of my PC. I've additionally added another SSD. I've added a Samsung 980 M.2 NVMe SSD that is 1 TB in size, and I use that just for like fast storage for video editing and other tasks that favour high disk write speeds. And I've also upgraded the RAM from 16 to 32 GB, but other than that, I still have my i7 8700K CPU, my NVIDIA RTX 2070, as well as my existing Samsung 850 M.2 500GB SSD. So anyway, that essentially concludes what has changed in here since my last home network tour. I shall now continue the video back at my hallway cabinet where I shall conclude the video. We are now back at my hallway cabinet where I shall conclude the home network tour for 2022. However, just a few things worth noting before I end the video. Firstly is that my Oki MC342DN printer that was shown in the last home network tour is still set up the same way, so for more detail on that, see the previous home network tour linked in a video description. I also forgot to mention in the previous segment that my main PC still has the Intel X520 10GB NIC with the fibre cable going from my switch in this cabinet to my bedroom, as was shown in the previous home network tour. The kitchen also has a 1000 volt Belkin UPS that protects everything except the TV. My Draytech 2960 router in the cabinet also has session based load balancing, so for sites that employ session based load balancing, I essentially get double the upload and download speed. I also have a quite extensive CCTV system, not only at this place but also at other places that I manage. I may show a very blurred shot on screen now or not, I'm not sure, that will depend on what I decide when I come to edit the video. Also, my APs on this site, all three of them, are the Unify UAP AC SHD, and the locations of those are essentially in the loft, in the kitchen and in the shed at the bottom of the garden. And lastly, I will put the full specs of everything on screen before I say goodbye, so you can essentially watch the last part of the video and actually learn what the spec of everything is. Anyway, I'll now say goodbye and hand over to the actual specs of everything. So until my next home network tour, that will probably be about a year's time or so, I'll say thanks for watching and goodbye.